What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Evening Alpha. I'm your host, Todd Wanish, 26-year veteran of the comic and animation fields. We have an amazing guest tonight. I am super excited. We're bringing on Joe from the Society of the Hourglass. Welcome, man. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing awesome, and super glad to have you here.
Likewise.
For those in the audience that don't know, anyone new watching, this is a little different than other interviews or Twitter spaces you might have seen in the past. Really, this is a founder talk. We're just hanging out. We talk about our projects naturally, and of course, we want to talk about what's happening in Web3 and the NFT space, and oftentimes, it's just a brainstorm, and the conversations get kind of crazy, and we love it. So, yeah, man, welcome. So, first question, kind of the standard boilerplate thing is. So I'm really curious to know the history of Society Hourglass, because you kind of had me at recreating the magic of Saturday morning cartoons, because obviously you're calling my generation, right?
No, that's the line that gets everybody,
Yeah.
And myself included. Like that, I don't even remember where we came up with that, but we got said in a chat or something at one point as we were chatting with the team. I was like, oh, that hits different. We got to use that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So, I mean, our team is, we're all fully doxxed. We've known each other for years. We've worked together in real life.
Yeah.
I think the benefit that's given us as a team is we've already kind of been through the ringer of like getting to know each other's quirks and how do you challenge and motivate each other, which is one of the hardest things about working with a new team. Knowing that we're that familiar with each other, I actually got started in NFTs and Web3. I guess it was last July. Started as most people do, trading, collecting. Just could tell the space is just different. Had a couple of experiences with communities that really just kind of sucked me in, and I haven't looked up since. So I pulled a couple of my buddies in. We started just kind of chatting every week about trading. Before long, we started talking about how we would go about doing our own project, and we went through a lot of, I don't know that I would say specific ideas, but just kind of directional conversations around what felt important to us. So I think the thing that we were trying to solve, and context, this is probably late August, early September last year. We're kind of right at the peak of the tail end of the mania that was last summer.
Yeah.
And you see the kind of the height of the whitelist grind meta. Everybody's kind of fully filling themselves and everyone else up on this false hopium, just trying to get a spot. And it just started feeling really, really gross. So it's like, okay, one thing we know, we don't want to do that.
Right. It's bad when you feel like you need to take a shower.
Yeah, man. Just like, it was just unhealthy, right? Like you've got people here talking about the future, but we're creating a future where like the standard is you just got to stay glued to a screen for 12 hours a day.
Yeah, right.
It's like, man, I don't want any part of that. So we knew we wanted it to be a little bit different in that regard. We knew we wanted to do something physical. I'm a print guy by trade. My background is in graphic design and print. I ran a print brand agency for a long time before.
Oh, right on. I was going to ask you about this. Yeah.
Yeah, but before moving into technology and user experience, that was kind of where my passion was. So we came up with the idea for the Seek and Find book. Chris, one of my co-founders, knew Mike, who's our artist, they were college roommates. And Mike is just this really, really talented children's illustrator. He's done a bunch of books. And so we were looking through his work. And it's like, man, he's got his style is opinionated enough. It's quirky. It's fun. Let's do it. So before long, we kind of had some of those things figured out. And through some combination of conversation and brainstorming, we settled on this theme of history and time travel, and the idea of being able to kind of leverage the IRL character development that's happened in real life from real historical figures, but then layer on this like fantasy element with time travel and science fiction.
It's kind of got
the futures. Super fun.
It's kind of got this like it definitely reminds me of like the generation one of like Cartoon Network combined with a vibe of like that old Carmen Sandiego, where in time is Carmen Sandiego.
I use the "Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego"
Where in the world,
reference
right.
a lot. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I mean my early elevator pitch for what we were trying to build story wise was like Back to the Future meets Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego meets Where's
Yeah.
Walt meets Bill and Ted. So you throw all of those things together, and just it's a recipe for this quirky, fun, but also like potentially educational and really interesting,
Yeah.
storyline. And then the narrative universe that we're building is just it has so much potential, looking into the past, looking into the future, and as we think about, from our perspective, like the right way to go about telling these stories. Certainly we have our own ideas as a team, but it's like, man, we got to get this universe in the hands of our community and let them start building on it.
Right.
And we're just getting started, right? Like we're still pretty early in the life cycle of what we're building, but I think the potential and some of the traction we're seeing with the book and the animated series is already really, really exciting.
Yeah, I like I think it's always such a challenge. I think people would be surprised to hear, like, it's whenever you're creating an intellectual property or a brand, or especially something with character, like a character franchise.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges a team can face when they're coming up with a concept is trying to come up with a scenario that can last more than one season. Meaning it's like, how do we have this concept that is the sandbox? We need the sandbox to be so open that it can be forever. And the flagpole of that is always Doctor Who, because Doctor Who had that, because it had that timey-wiminess, right?
Yep.
And it could be like one episode is a sci-fi adventure at the end of time, and the other one is like with Beethoven. And so and it fits perfectly within the theme of the show. And so I think being able to kind of recreate that in a new way and kind of package it is pretty cool. I really think it's really innovative.
And you made a comment too there about this idea of kind of building the sandbox. That's exactly how we've thought about this as well. We're going through a series of different phases of writer's room in our Discord with our community, and the first kind of phase of that was really just understanding what goes into producing, an IP at this scale and things like that. Next phase was actually working together to kind of flesh out the rules of the universe. And we decided to start with the world building at that level before we went down the path of any kind of individual character storytelling, for exactly that reason. It's like, man, we've got to have the kind of boundaries of this universe built so that we know kind of how to construct character stories within the context of that. That's the phase we're getting ready to kick off now. We've got a narrative Bible, story Bible coming out of that first process, and now we're getting ready to dig in and start working on character stories, backstories, which I'm super excited about.
Nice. So your background, so you came from print, like, and I did a little bit of print back in the day, like old school screen printing, and moved all the way through, and then with comics. Cool. And then with comics, once you get into pre-press and actual production, like, I love it. Even the logistics of it, I was like kind of into.
It's fascinating.
It really is. It's incredibly in depth. I think it's really an art. It really is.
Yeah.
And like, so did you go from, like, what was your path like to Web3 and NFTs? Like, was it something like print, and then you mentioned like UX or UI, and then moved into tech, like on the dev side, or how was your path?
Yeah, my path has been weird, man.
Yeah, you and me both.
I guess anyone that's ended up in Web3 probably has a weird story in some regard.
That's right. Yeah.
But
Web3, the entire Web3 space is the Star Wars cantina. Pretty much.
Totally.
We're the last bar at the edge of the galaxy.
Yes. So I started in print. It's funny, like, I actually kind of found myself in graphic design because it was the closest thing to what I wanted to do that I could find within our means. So, we didn't grow up like super wealthy, so I was having to go to a college where I had a scholarship or was pretty cheap. I wanted to do game design, but they were all the colleges were out of state. And it's like, it's probably not going to work. But when I got plugged into graphic design and this idea of taking nothing and turning it into something that can be this really powerful device for communicating ideas and emotions in really interesting ways, I just fell in love with it. So went super deep in that, did that for a few years, started my print agency. We did brand work and then print. We actually had a full-scale production shop in the back of our design agency, which is a lot of fun. Getting to sit up front and jam with the team on some ideas and then go walk back to the back and come back with it in my hands.
It's so cool. Yeah.
There's something magical about that. The smell of the ink and the paper. So just, I've always had this affinity for like really tactile experiences. And after that, I just got to the point where being an entrepreneur was a lot for a while. So I decided, hey, I think maybe I just need a job for a while. In the course of this process, my wife and I had 3 kids, and so I was like, let's slow down for a bit. So I took a gig as a creative director at another shop, and did that for a little while, and then just eventually kind of found myself recognizing like, hey, digital's not really going anywhere. Probably need to figure this out and get on board. So I just dove into user experience design, ended up as a VP of design at a tech agency. We were building software for some of the world's biggest companies, like employee-facing software to help them do their jobs better, which was super interesting. Like challenges at that scale, with all of these intricate use cases, just fascinating. It was anything unlike anything I'd done before. And eventually, I was there for several years, and had kind of just found myself falling out of love with what I did. So about a year ago, last March, decided to like, hey, this is probably a good time to step away. We've been through a lot. Like, let's just kind of recoup here and figure out what it is that gets me excited. And
so you decided to go like was it like ice road trucking basically?
It kind of like, that's kind of how it felt. I mean, I tried a lot.
I went from UI UX and print to the world's deadliest catch. It's fine. Everything's good.
I mean, there's about a month where I didn't do anything, and then tried talking to different companies, doing this and that, and then I mean, actually, the way I specifically got into Web3 was I got COVID and I was quarantined with nothing to do. Thankfully, my symptoms were pretty mild after the first couple of days, so it wasn't so much that I was bedridden. I just couldn't go anywhere. And in that time, I have a buddy who is an artist who has done pretty well for himself doing one-of-one art and NFTs, and I'd seen him posting more and more about it. I was like, I've got time to kill sitting here doing nothing. Rather than binge a new TV series, let's just check this thing out and figure out what it's all about. And that's kind of how it started.
Dude, it's so funny. Like I've talked to so many founders in the space, and so many people got their start specifically because of COVID. Like either like you had it, or just because everyone was in the same situation and found themselves in the same situation. Like, well, do I binge watch another Netflix show, or do I just kind of find something else? And it just kind of fell into an article or a podcast or something that just kind of led them down the path. The next thing you know, like I would venture to guess that a good 75% of the 2021 class, and probably a lot of the 2022 class too, is purely based off of the 2020 COVID thing. Like,
I absolutely think that's right. Like, if you look at the kind of culmination of circumstances, we were at like peak lockdown mania, especially different parts of the world had it even worse than others. And, regardless of the why, one of the implications was, I think we were all kind of starved for this like sense of connection and community. And so then for this like super bizarro world thing to come along, and like that's kind of the core promise of it, is this idea of community. I think it was just right place, right time, I think was a huge part of the boom that we saw last year.
And I would even say, like, for me, it wasn't necessarily the community. It was, at first anyway, right? Like for me, I think that also because I would even, community is definitely a piece of it, but I think a lot of it is, and I think you might agree, it's also, I think that a situation like that, when everything is closed and everyone's losing their job, and you're like everything everyone is like, literally everything that everyone on the planet has worked for is just like, nah, fuck that. Like, it's just over. Like, I think there's sort of this like, in some people, there's a trigger of an entrepreneurial fight or flight mechanism that just goes off, where where it's
That's a fair call
survival.
out.
It's like straight up survival. That's the call of the entrepreneur, and it always has been. It's like I'm the world's worst employee. You know, like it's just I knew that when I was a teenager. I got my first job at 12 years old, and I was working part-time in a grocery store, and I've worked every day since. And I just know myself, and I started making my own products and my own comics and my own toys and all this kind of stuff, and kind of moving up. You know, it took me 20 plus years because I didn't have a background in business or marketing or anything. I had to learn all that the hard way. But like, I think the idea of like, it's up to me now, you know, like all this stuff is kind of gone now. I can't depend on anything, right? So the only thing you can depend on is yourself to some degree. So all of a sudden it's like, okay, let me try my hand at this, because fuck it. Like the worst case scenario, you just go back to doing what you were doing, right? And the lockdown period is like, well, you can't go back anyway. Yeah, so you might as well, everyone knows you have a computer. If you have a computer and a cell phone, you basically have a business, right? You have a computer, a Wi-Fi connection, and a cell phone. You have everything you need to do to start at least a 7-figure business. So it's like, why don't we sit down and figure out the tools from a different perspective? Is like, what can I build with this thing and do it now, so that if worst case scenario, when everything opens up and everything goes back to hopefully normal, I can go back to my job, but still have this thing that at worst case is padding or a side hustle or something that I built that I enjoyed, you know. And even if it doesn't work out, I can say that I accomplished that and I achieved that. Mm-hmm. And I think for so many entrepreneurs who were starting out and kind of jumping into it, I think COVID was sort of like the now or never moment, where it was like I might not even be here tomorrow, you know, or I can't go anywhere, or whatever everyone's individual reaction was. It was just like this cataclysmic event within entrepreneurship, because all of a sudden, you know, we saw it. Like the 2021 was like this massive boom. Not just we're talking about Web3, but it was across the board in entrepreneurship. People automatically, when everything stops and there is no office and there is no job, everyone has to figure out how to still maintain a business. Like every business had to rebuild itself from the ground up, right? And so I find it fascinating, like how these things work.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting perspective. I think you're probably right. And maybe it depends on which side of the coin you came in on, right? Either because you're collecting and trying to make money that way, or building. I think those are two kind of fundamentally different experiences, although maybe you're kind of pointing in the same direction.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
You know, for me, there definitely was an element of exactly what you're describing. Like, you know, I found myself over the last couple of years just wasn't super happy doing what I was doing. I found myself doing less and less of the things that I felt like I was good at, and more of the things that I didn't. And it's a tough way to like wake up and go to work every morning. And, you know, you carry that kind of heaviness home, and my wife feels it, my kids feel it. And, so then to find myself in the midst of this just Wild West world that I'm having a blast in, and then like, oh yeah, by the way, like this is probably the future. So, you know, the thing that always gets me excited about it, like thinking of making the parallel to like the early internet. You know, back then I was just a kid. Yeah. Like all I could do was experience the kind of genesis of the internet as a user, as a consumer.
Right.
Now I've got this career and these experiences and skills and abilities to participate as a creator that I didn't have the first time. Like you don't get very many chances like that in a lifetime. And I mean, kind of like what you're saying, like I told my wife, like worst case, this falls flat on its face. Yeah. And I get to say, I at least didn't waste the opportunity to try and create something meaningful in this. Also, I don't think that's going to happen. Like, I think this is it. So yeah, it's really, really powerful.
It was the same. I had the same conversations with, Melissa, my wife, she happens to be our senior dev. She's just a brilliant developer.
That's awesome.
And I had the same conversation. Like when we discovered Web3, or I discovered Web3, and it was, and I tell people this, it was like, if you could take my own personal Venn diagram of if you could take all the things that make me and just put them into three general circles of like intellectual property and creative development and fine art and technology. And you took all of that and just like laid it on top of NFTs. And I'd never seen any, I was like, thought I was dreaming. I was like, this can't be real. And I had the same, almost verbatim conversations where I was like, look, same thing. I was too young during the .com bubble, right? I mean, I was there and I was working, but I wasn't like founding anything. I was just like I was a freelancer, and so I saw that a little bit from the outside, but I wasn't super aware of it. And then during the tech boom, I was in New York City when tech started to take off, but at the time it really popped. At this point in time, the Web3 that we're in now, this point in time was about 2008. It was right around Lehman Brothers crash, and everyone started the startups. You know what I mean? Like everyone from finance said, "I'll just fund my own fucking company," and so they just started startups, and that's really what's kind of started. I mean, there was like Foursquare and a couple other things around that time, but it really started to take off right around that period. And I was in it. I kind of came in around 2010, but I came in from the art side, so it took me another. It took me another several years just to figure out, like, you know, all the pieces, the UI and the UX. And then I did front end development, and then I was learning marketing, and I was still doing then I had a consulting firm, and then I started like building my own startups and then failing my own startups and going after venture capital, like all these years to do that. And so I kind of like missed this moment, right? Like I still got plenty of great moments, but by the time I got to the point where I was able to find success, that early adopter curve had already passed. We were already past it. We were kind of more toward the mainstream adoption, right? And right now, so I recognize this moment, and I tell everybody about this repeatedly. Everyone's probably tired of me talking about it, but you know, we're like that. The fact that we're at the very beginning of the adoption curve, and you can tell you're at the very beginning of the adoption curve because the beginning of that adoption curve is the hype cycle. It's just total FOMO, whatever's cool with me. Like, oh, it's hot, go get it. Like, it's not about anything other than emotional control, and that tells you that we're in this beginning period. And so I saw it, and I dropped everything. I dropped all my other businesses. I dropped 100% of it. I said, this is a once in a lifetime thing. I can always go back. I've already established my own startups and my own companies because I've been independent for a long time. So, you know, I could always build something again, or I could go back and rebuild something that I turned off, you know, turn the machine back on. But I was like, this is such a big opportunity. And it's the thing, like you said, it doesn't happen. This may be the last time in our life. Right. Totally. You know what I mean? Like, and to be straight up, like, even if it happens again, you know, I mean, by the time from the .com bubble to, you know, to the time when the startups really started taking off was at least 10 or 15 years. And so if there was something that would come beyond this, it's going to be 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And so we're going to be senior citizens being like, I'm going to launch this startup. Like, no, like, there's no way, man.
Yeah. I'm looking for the easy street at that point.
That's right on. That's right on. I'm just looking to see, as long as I can have eyesight, I'll be happy. Right. So I was like, this is it. Like, we have to go. Like, same thing. It's like, we finally have the tools to go for it. So with that said, I'm curious, like, you know, when you're building a project, I'm always interested in the kind of the different perspectives between being like a collector on the front end, who just sees the project and it's all its finished glory and goes through the pre-launch cycle and goes to the launch, mints, and then collects, and then is part of a community. And then the backside, which is the founder side, which is like fire and chaos and like
on a daily basis. And
it's just like, you know, just grind from sun up to sundown. And it's, you know, people that don't like, it's amazing. Like, one of the challenges that we have sometimes, I think, is that our Discord, like, if I don't post in Discord, it can look like maybe, and this is maybe my perception, but it can kind of look like Discord is slow. When in
Mhm.
reality, it's that we're so freaking busy with calls and
Yeah,
partnerships
totally.
and all
Totally.
this stuff going on that it's like it's the exact opposite. So I'm curious from another project's perspective, like what do you find that is like either the hard thing or the thing that kind of knocked you on your ass that you weren't expecting, or what's that crazy point that you find in society?
Yeah, man. I feel like there's been a lot of those moments, right? I think part of the biggest challenge probably is that there just is no real playbook for how to do
Yeah.
this. It's so unlike starting a company in any other way.
Yeah.
This is not my first, it sounds like it's not your first rodeo either as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, but holy shit, like this feels different. Um, the expectations from the market are different, and by the time you get your head wrapped around them, it's completely different again because it moves so fast. Then you have to layer on top of that all of the just the machinations of running a company. And on the NFT side, there's creating the art, working on the tech side, thinking
Right.
about like how are we actually going to build this in a way that feels sustainable and that we can do it long term, right? The thing that I always tell people is like, we're not an NFT project. We're building a media brand. We
Mm.
started with an NFT project, and that's like the community that we are always going to work super, super hard to reward and incentivize
Mhm.
and give them access to how we're building this. But the vision for what we're building, it's so much bigger than just NFTs to me, right? Like we've got the books, we've got the animated series, toys and merchandise and games, all of this
Yeah.
stuff. And we're going to weave the spirit of Web3 into all of that. And it's new to me and to everybody. And so that's where some of the challenges come from, is just trying to think through, like, okay, not only is like the entertainment industry new for me, Web3 is also new for me. So how do you
Right.
reconcile?
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to go do this because there's like, I mean, we talk as entrepreneurs all the time about like our right to win, like what's our unique right to win in the
Yeah.
space. And I think one of the things that I feel like we've gotten really good at in our careers is just knowing how to build good teams, and surround ourselves with people that are smarter and better than us at the right things. So that's kind of the spirit that I approach what we're building at the Society of the Hourglass with. Like, I don't need to be the one that figures out the path to this or that. I need to make sure we have the right people in place to do that.
Right.
And so like the animated series, for example, that was not something that we set out to do originally. We talked about it, but ultimately decided like that's a nut we probably don't know how to crack. We don't have the relationships, we don't have the experience. Also, everybody is saying they're going to go start an animated series right now, and it's like,
I know.
okay, sure you are.
Yeah.
Like, good luck, but I don't think that that's probably how that's going to go.
Yeah, there people have asked me like I'm an animation director and I've got 26 years under my belt and over 150 commercials animated or directed, and animation is not on my immediate roadmap.
Yeah,
And
it's
there's
a
a
lot,
reason.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we ultimately shelved any other conversations about that, and then by happenstance got connected to the studio out in LA, and they're getting into Web3. They were looking for entrepreneurs and teams that they could just talk to and learn from. So I have an artist friend that had worked with a couple of people on their team on some other projects. He's like, oh, you should talk to Joe. He's new to it, but he's learning a lot. He's doing it quick. He's doing it the right way. He could probably share some insights with you. So we jammed for a little bit on just kind of how I viewed Web3, like what do I see that I like, what do I not, here's what I think you should watch out for, because we learned this the hard way. And so after that conversation, we just kind of started shooting the breeze and just going a little deeper on our IP and what we're building. And they fell in love with it. We had so much alignment from a values perspective. Like, we've got to figure out how to make this happen. So we've got a plan now, and we've got a path to funding the hiring a writer. Which is the process we're in right now, which has been super cool to just be a part of. The thing that I get to geek out on is because it's new to me too. Like, I'm learning and having fun right alongside our community and letting our studio partner kind of shepherd us through that process.
So are you building? Are you going full pilot? Are you doing trailer, or are you doing like just setting up the pieces like the the production viable animatics kind of storyboards?
So the plan right now, and we always kind of keep every plan with an open palm and reserve the right change it if the opportunity presents itself. But the plan right now is we've got our story Bible. We created that with our community. We're hiring a writer. We're going to have them write the pilot script and kind of flesh out the structure of the remainder of the season of a first season. And we've got kind of an episodic structure that we think makes sense. We've picked a target demographic, and we allowed, or we kind of went through this process with our community to, like, of all of our characters, you guys pick which ones you want to see as like the stars of the show, right? When you've got 30 some odd like main characters in your collection, you can't make 30 characters the main character of your show. So we're gonna have to like zoom in a little bit, and so we've got all these really cool like community driven decisions that have been made. So after we hire the writer, we're gonna try to produce the full pilot episode, and we're actually in the process of working with another studio and a university to pursue a grant that would have the production of that pilot episode tied to a new program at the university.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, like there's a lot going on here in Northwest Arkansas where I am, with the Bentonville Film Festival started by Gina Davis and some other things. So we're really trying to get plugged into that community and having some really interesting partnership conversations. And it just, we're trying to remain adaptive and pivot as we need to, but right now it feels like we're headed down the right path for this thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I certainly can appreciate kind of taking it step by step and building a product and being smart about what you're trying to build. And I hear you with so many projects kind of over promising, and it's a challenge. I think one of the challenges that is one of the challenges I think for I don't want to say legitimate NFT projects, because that's not a correct frame of mind, but for more experienced entrepreneurs or businesses in the space, because there is something to be said for under promising and over delivering.
Yeah. I think it's the difference between experience is probably a lot of it. I think it's the difference between viewing what you're doing as a project or building a business, because those are not the same thing. Right. And there's a lot of, I think maybe false equivalency made between those ideas, and they're used as interchangeable. But I think if you really kind of dig in and dissect and look at the team's strategy for what they're going to do, short term and long term, the kind of things that they're promising, even the confidence level, right? Like if everything is, this is exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to go do it. It's like, you've probably not built anything before, because that's not how that works.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you just try to have in my opinion, you've got to have a healthy dose of vision and optimism, but also realism and a willingness to say like, hey, that didn't work, so we're going to pivot and we're going to try this instead. And I think the thing that has been really helpful for us is the way we built our community. I mentioned earlier on, like we were really did not want to go and kind of play into the hype meta that felt like it was kind of par for the course.
Yeah, same here.
And I think that's really been reflected in the quality of community we've built. Now it's hard and it's slow because we're not playing into those tropes. Like you don't catch as many, headlines and pumps and things like that. But the community that we've got is really engaged. The people that are there showing up every day are there because they're invested in the IP. They want to play a part in helping shape it. And, we're giving people that just found themselves in this space access to Hollywood producers and talent, and getting to see a part of this process that has forever kind of been locked in this black box. And, it's just really, really cool.
Was that a challenge? Like one of the things that I think was a shock, and it ties into kind of the marketing and what to your point of kind of choosing the slow and steady growth path over that big like hype emotional thing, is that one of the biggest challenges I think, and I think it's still a challenge, is the and this goes to your other point as well, even earlier when you're talking about how there's it's such a new beast with this Web3 thing. And one of the things that I find so fascinating is that there is no other space in the history of all mankind that I know of where you're expected to launch your business and sell out all of your units within an X period of time, or else it's seen as like a negative. It's like if you would never say you would. It's like the equivalent is like opening a grocery store,
right?
And then if you haven't sold every single item in the grocery store by midnight that night, your business is done. It's a rug. This grocery store sucks. It's over. And it's so hard. I cannot stress enough for any founder, any an NFT project. It is by far the biggest obstacle, and it puts so much pressure. And this is also why I think you see so much attraction to like influencer marketing and everything else, because everybody knows that if you don't sell out or figure a way out to sell out, like then at least the initial perception, unless your community is strong, and there are exceptions that we'll talk about, but like the general perception is that if it doesn't sell out, it's done. And like when we launched, you know, we ended up launching into like the NFT winter, which was a great time to launch. and so we had a whole bunch of friends in the space, and we were looking at everybody who was launching before us. I mean, like days and weeks before us, and they all had the 10K PFP launches, and they were just missing, and not missing by a little, missing by a lot. And we were like, oh shit, like there's no way. And they had bigger discords, and because they had done influencer marketing, we were like, oh my god, like we're gonna die. So thankfully we had talked to our community, and our community was real strong, and they had already been telling us internally, like, hey, we think you guys have something special here. It doesn't have to be 10K. Why don't you cut it, make it more rare, and make it just like for us? And so the community feedback, combined with what we saw in the market, was like kind of made it. Thank God it made it a no-brainer, right? And so we were like, okay, cool, and we changed the numbers. But it's so crazy. Like even today, like. So we were fortunate. We cut the number and we sold out within like 48 hours, right? And meanwhile, we have friends who had great projects. Like, so we did 2,200 pieces. So we had 2,200 pieces sold out. They had like 10,000 pieces and ended up selling like, you know, one sold like a little over 7, one sold like in the 9s, but they didn't hit the 10. And so even though they sold like 3 or 4x what we did, and were way better funded, and, you know, did exponentially better in terms of like number of buyers. Ours was perceived as a success, and that was perceived as a failure. And I don't think it's fair. And I think it's such a unique thing in a Web3. And I'm wondering, like, for you guys, in terms of marketing, like, what have you found that works? What doesn't work? Like, what are the challenges you faced? And I love the fact that you kind of chose the slow and steady route. That's what we've done. Even though straight up, like, we still have conversations about, hey, we've got this launch coming up. Do we want to do advertising? You know, I know how to do ads, you know, like I'm very used to this stuff. Like, do we want to do paid advertising? Do we want to do influencer marketing? Like, all of that stuff is on the table, and we start saying no, and kind of whittle it down. So how do you guys approach that?
Yeah, I mean, man, we talk about this probably every single day, because it's super frustrating sometimes to see that attitude. I think it's indicative of a couple of things. One is just how immature and new the space is. There's just a lot of inexperienced money in the space that doesn't know how to value like long-term building, right? Like, I mean, the space as a whole is so new, we don't even really know what long-term means. And then you have the other thing that I think affects that type of thinking, and that's the fact that, like, regardless of what people say, I think like 99% of people are in the space to make money right now.
Right.
And you know, I think that changes over time. I think as the space grows and inches more towards mainstream, which is a bet that we've placed on the way we are building and the things that we're doing, I think that the balance of who's here for the money and the speculation, which is fine, I think that becomes less the majority. And then what does become more pervasive is people that are just looking at Web3 as a new way to engage with brands and ideas and companies that they like. And so we're trying to build with that type of vision in mind, right? We want to think about accessible entry points into our brand. If our NFTs always cost, $200,000, most people are not going to be able to buy into what we're doing. It's not a great signal to send for a brand that's trying to be for everybody. So we're looking at scale of accessibility and how we grow. Now the specific question around like supply and the perception of success versus failure, we've done a couple of things there that I think have helped, and we're still learning too. Like, so rather than our total supply is 8,888, we decided back in, I guess, probably December before we launched, like, hey, we're not going to release the whole collection. We're gonna segment it into chapters, is how we're describing it, and it's a quarter at a time. So chapter 1 was 2,222. We sold that out, and it took us about 3 weeks to sell that out. Awesome. So we get like the sellout message, right? We sold out chapter 1. Mm-hmm. We just recently opened chapter 2, which is kind of the next quarter. And the market is totally different right now than it was in January. So it's going a lot slower. Mm-hmm. That said, like, I'm still confident in our long term, right? And part of that is looking at the fact that, like, hey, we've got funding from chapter 1. We're a really scrappy small team. I'm the only one taking a salary right now. I'm focused on it full time. Like, this is my livelihood, so I'm not going to let it fail.
Right.
For
one.
And we've got runway through basically the end of the year if we didn't mint a single NFT beyond that. And that is, like, we've already budgeted for producing the book that we promised. We budgeted to pay the writer for our series. Like, all of that's factored in. Mm-hmm. And so, our experience as entrepreneurs, I think, is helping us a lot there. And in the kind of behind the scenes, like, we're also working on some things that we're pretty confident are going to push a sellout in the collection, that we hope to be able to announce here in the next month or so, which is a different story entirely. But we're focused on building, and I think, again, going back to the type of community that we've been able to gather and build, like, we don't get a lot of like quick speculators, because that's not what we're optimizing the experience for. Mm-hmm. What we do get, though, are people that just absolutely fall in love with what we're building when they come across it. Like, I've yet to describe the scope and the scale of what we're trying to do and not have someone geek out about it and think it's super cool. Yeah. So we're just trying to find opportunities to send that message as often as possible is the thing that we're trying to do. And I think the thing that gets interesting that we have not started doing yet, but will, is like looking at maybe more traditional marketing for the book or for the series. Right. Like that book is not going to be successful because it's based off of NFTs. If that book is going to be successful, it has to be because it's a cool book, and it has to be compelling and have a good story and have good like art. And so we've got to be able to build these products on their own merit.
Yeah. And I also wonder too, like, something that I noticed is the difference between, and this is a new thought, but the difference between like PFP projects and sort of the quote unquote mainstream of the NFT space, and the franchise building story side of things. Yeah. Right. I think I will be curious. Hindsight is always 2020, and I will be very curious to see 5 years from now, looking back, like, who is still here and what happened. And I'm my hypothesis, there will certainly be PFP projects that, there's massive successes in the PFP side, right? That capitalized on hype, whether they paid for it, whether it was internal, or they just got lucky and caught the wave. But I think a majority of those projects are not going to be here. And I think that's just normal, right? That's the 90% of all startups fail. It's like 92% or something. And a lot of it, and I think it's actually more than that. I think it's actually more than 92%, because I think it might even be like 94 to 96%, because you're also, like, to your point, adding inexperienced founders, inexperienced teams. It's a project, not necessarily a business. Maybe they don't run a business. They've never run a business. They don't understand team building. They don't understand product launching, long-term growth, long-term sales, marketing, like all the pieces that you need to know. And on the contrary, at least from our little corner that now is growing, like there's maybe like, I mean, last year there was like maybe 3 of us, and now there's like a couple of dozen, I think, in this sort of the storytelling franchise building area.
Yeah.
Right. And it seems that most teams are choosing the slow, steady build. Like, as long as we have a sale and it does better than the last one, or as long as we bring in new people into the fold and keep everybody happy and excited, and the machine starts to work in terms of community building and everybody kind of pitching in to help kind of create this stuff together, as long as that collaboration part is working and there's a little bit of growth, what you have is that it seems to me like the franchise builders, and maybe it's because of entertainment backgrounds or just having a normal business background, like understanding that, hey, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Right.
Certainly, like, I'll be the first to admit, like, every time I see yet another anonymous team that does like an influencer drop, and the roadmap was like copy pasted from the last copy pasted thing, and they sell out and it's like $18 million or something.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh my God, like,
it's
why?
disheartening sometimes.
It's so hard. But then, I also, it's like, look, good for them. Get back to work. Keep grinding. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right.
But I also know that, I think on the storytelling side, that the projects that are focused on character building, product creation, steady growth, and steady scaling, I mean, there's no reason why all of us can't be here in 5 to 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that I believe to be true. One is that everybody is inherently creative, and I think to me, it's not a question of are you creative. It's have you found the right way to express that creativity. And I think that's the really powerful thing about like what we're doing and what Adult Fantasy and others like kind of in our vein are doing, is that we're giving people the means to kind of tap back into that and rediscover things that maybe they forgot they had. And there's a lot of power in that. And the other thing that I believe is that regardless of what happens economically, like this innate human need and desire to like be entertained and tell stories is always going to exist.
Right.
And so like, to me, like hitching kind of the value proposition of our IP to those things that I believe to be true is why I'm so confident in our long term. Because trends are going to come and go, but those innate needs and desires are always going to exist.
Yeah.
So we just have to find the right ways to tap into them.
100%, man. And I'm also like, I guess I've also been around long enough to not want to jump into the fire first. I'm like, the way that I see it is like, it's twofold. It's like, well, one, a lot of what we're building with Adult Fantasy is not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Like there's so like collecting has been around for centuries, and I've been a collector obviously in my lifetime, which is 20th century, 21st century, like obviously. So there are mechanisms in all of this that work, that trigger that collecting, like I have to have it, like gotta have it, gotta catch them all. Like there are mechanisms in there that work, and I think that a lot of Web3 companies in the NFT space get caught in the buzzwordiness, where, not to say that it's bad, but it's such a higher risk because you risk becoming a fad super quick. Like, the minute there's a game that comes out, or a play to earn game that comes out, that's purely, staking, tokenizing, burning, whatever. There's a bunch of copycats, and that's great. And not to say that those mechanics can't work. They certainly can work, but you're going to have dozens of these businesses fail over time, they're not going to fail in 6 months because they're getting
Right.
funded super quick. But
Right.
over the next couple of years, they're going to collapse one after the other until there's a model that is replicated that works for that type of system. And then you can take it in and put it into your business. If you're doing something long term, why would you want to risk that? Like, you know, the old startup saw is like, you can always tell the pioneers by the number of arrows in their back, right? Like you want to be Google, you don't want to be Lycos or Netscape or, you know, whatever. So, you know, I think kind of going the long road, you know, if your roadmap is 25, 30 years, like, you know, I mean, we're delivering and you're delivering like all the time anyway, because it's the NFT space. So you're going to be delivering all the time. Then, you know, why not, at least from the community side, build up slow, steady, and get the real people in who are really going to give a shit, who are actually going to be the ones to kind of add that creation value to the property, you know?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like, how much conviction do you actually have in what you're building or in the space, right? Like, I think there's probably a tinge of fear even that's built into the kind of hype cycle approach, because people are trying to capitalize on it before it's gone. And like, yeah, man, that is not where I would want to park my car.
Amen to that, dude.
And, you know, you have people that are chasing the like unicorn success story of BAYC or others, and it's like that can work. But to think that is the path is like, that's why so many startups fail.
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to just mimic and mirror what you've already seen, rather than finding your way through this process and doing it in a way that it, you know, connects with you and with the people that you've surrounded yourself with.
Yeah.
I think, and we've said it a lot. To me, it just, a lot of it really does go back to experience, and not that experience guarantees future success, but man, it sure doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it absolutely helps. You know, sometimes it's that slow and steady wins the race mentality, you know, and by slow, you're still launching every month. It's just, you know, you're launching all the time. It's just, you know, slow in certain aspects. You're like, okay, this is slow and steady.
Our whole concept, we were talking about this before we came on, our whole concept of time has gotten so just stupidly out of whack because of this space. Like the definition of speed and slow and all these things is so off kilter.
We were laughing this morning. We have a daily stand up, and Flint, who's like one of our top dev, Flint and Melissa are the top two devs, and Flint handles more of the Unity and art side, and he had made this spreadsheet, like a really simple spreadsheet, yesterday morning, and because we were just trying to figure out some numbers, and like, and this morning stand up, I was like, yeah, so I was looking at that spreadsheet you made, and he was like, spreadsheet, like. And then I was like, yeah, the one you made yesterday morning. And he was like, and he just started dying because he was like, he couldn't. It felt so long ago that he was just like,
hilarious.
He's like, when did I make that? Like, I can't remember. It really funny. Is. I definitely. It's been I mean, I think that it really is true. Like, you know, the inside joke of like, well, you're an OG if you've been here 12 months, like. You know, it's like I remember
isn't that ridiculous? Because it's so little time in the grand scheme of things.
And when it's microseconds. And you know what's funny is like when we started promoting, and we'll start to get some questions from chat too in here in a second. But like when we started pitching the technology last summer, because one of our big things was, you know, of course we were presenting the decentralized world building and lore creation, and that was like our number one thing, and we were, you know, there was kind of like really pushing that. And then but on the other side, we had invented new technology to make this happen. So we went through the process, we got patent pending on it, and we went through the whole process. So we were like, we invented technology, it's ours, like, because it's about planting that flag. And we were just like, this works. We know it works. We have history. Like we have this. And we got a lot of people in the space who were super excited. And I reached out to every influencer because I was like, just trying to do organic. And I went every single influencer, and some responded that were super cool. Most, of course, did not, which is also totally fine. But then you have like one or two, and I'm not going to mention any names, that were just like, fuck you, I hate, like visceral hatred. And it was like out of the blue, and you're just like, I don't understand like this attitude. And trying to have a conversation, they were like visibly angry through text, and you're like, bro, like
it's unreal, man.
It's unbelievable. And what it really boiled down to, in my opinion, was that these guys came in like the 2017 class or whatever, you know, and I call it class because it really is like high school. It's like they came in like the 2017 class, and their perspective was 100% utopian. 100% utopian, where it was 100% that total freedom, total self-sovereignty, which you know, I believe in as well. However, there were like no centralization, nothing traditional at all, like no contracts, nothing, just purity. And I'm like, that's not real to me,
right?
You know,
right.
And I had a like a friendly back and forth with this guy, and of course publicly he was like trying to trash us. I'm like, wow, privately you're kind of being a gentleman, and publicly you're trashing it. Like that's
weird.
Yeah, you're just a clown. But the interesting thing was that it was the perspective that doing something legally to protect yourself was seen as an affront to everything Web3. And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about, because, you know, I mean, it was we took it as a compliment that they thought we were like some massive corporation, right? And it's a tribute to our design and the team. And I was like, that's a quality, that's a UI win. You know what I mean?
Totally.
I was like, I'm taking that as a feather in the cap, like, you know, because we're like, you know, just a few people. But it really came down to, I was like, you got it wrong, man. This is about us, the little guy, defending ourselves from the Disneys and you don't think these other companies are going to come in and instantly patent and do everything? Like, since we've seen that, like there was only a couple months ago where like McDonald's came in and they filed something like a dozen patents for like metaverse cafes and all kinds of crazy shit. Like they're doing this left. You don't even people do not know half of the companies that are even in the space, because they're not announcing shit. They're just buying it up. They're buying land and they're patenting everything. They're copywriting, patenting, trademarking everything.
Their Web3 play is going to be sue everyone out of existence.
That's right. They're owning the legal side of it, because they understand how it works. And the only thing you can do is to protect yourself as best you can. And if you think that's anti-Web3, then sorry, you just don't know what life is like. You know, it's a threat.
Yeah, there's this really, I struggle with this sometimes, because I very much believe in the ideals of the space, but like there is a very unhealthy idealism that I think is kind of pervasive in a lot of corners of the space. And, you know, this kind of just blatant refusal to engage with anything deemed as centralized or corporate, just kind of on the principle of it is I think oftentimes coming from a good place. You know, it's this idea that like, hey, that has led to a lot of the structures and systems that we're trying to change right now. Therefore, everything about it is bad. I think the challenge with that line of thinking, though, is like to your point, that's not the world we live in right now. And in order to change the system, you've got to know how to operate within it.
Right.
And if you just kind of go through that with your blinders up, like, you're probably not going to survive that. So it's funny sometimes how that type of, I think, foresight and diligence and like, frankly, like level of professionalism sometimes is seen as a downside by people in the space. And again, just going back to what we were talking about earlier, just super immature. Like there's a lot of growth that has to happen in the space, I think, for us to really start finding our way through some of this.
On all sides, right? On all sides. Like it's a lot of the collectors who buy NFTs, like this is the first thing they've ever collected in their life. It's like day one comic book collector. You know what I mean? Like, everything is collectible. Just get everything. It's awesome. You're like, well, you know, you can put down the My Little Pony comic. It's probably not gonna be worth that much. You know, like it's okay. Let me introduce you to the X-Men. You know, like okay. But But yeah, like, all right. So we got some good comments here. I'm gonna share some things here. We got J-Raw. What's up, J-Raw? What up, Todd? What up, Joe? Listening from work right now. What's up, man? J-Raw is awesome. Bad Kitty, happy Friday. Happy Friday, Bad Kitty. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Mastiff, happy Friday the 13th. What's up, Mastiff? How are you? And he says, Web3 is Star Wars Cantina. Perfect. Dusty says, I'm one of the 2021 Web3 COVID class. Wouldn't be here if it weren't for COVID.
That's right.
Totally, man. Like it really
move, man.
It really was. Hype. What's up, Hype? How are you? My company is a pandemic baby. Oh, I like that. Pandemic baby.
That's a great way of thinking about it.
That's a real way of thinking about it. Yeah. Says some of the most successful startups came out of bear markets.
Totally.
Which is why I'm so bullish right now. Yep.
This is where success stories get written.
It really is. It really is. And you know, it's every single time I see an article, and it happens every couple of months. And again, I think this is also maybe with the old OG thing is like there's a bear market every month and a half. And every time anything falls, there's a flood of articles that are like NFTs are dead. NFTs are stupid. Everyone's getting wrecked. Everyone's broke. Crypto's debt. Like just it goes on. And I'm just like, you know,
like, do you not remember ETH was here like 2 months ago?
Have you not seen the Netflix stock chart? Has anyone not seen the Netflix stock chart? Like, yes, because anything else is so much safer. No, like, yes, there are risks involved, but the minute the market tanks, it's also the best opportunity if you're able to and you're positioned right. And sometimes it's luck, just like with everything. But if you're positioned correctly and your favorite coin or your favorite NFT drops by 75%, you can get in and ride that sucker back up just like you can with stocks. You know, it's
all about conviction.
It's conviction, 100%.
Yeah, totally.
Petra said, "Hi, Petra, how are you?" Says, "I had people telling me they couldn't participate because they were afraid of losing followers."
So this is a super frustrating perspective that we've run into some as well. In fact, Mike, our artist, if you've ever met Mike, like just one of the nicest people on the planet. Like you talk to this guy and there's like not an ill thought has ever entered his head. And he's from the traditional like illustration world, and he's gotten some flack for being involved in this. Even from he also teaches illustration at a university, and he's gotten kind of confronted by some of his students. Like, I thought you were a good person. It's like, yeah, dude, you need to like chill out for a minute and like stop armchair like newscasting me here, because it's all about education. But man, it's frustrating to see that kind of attitude so pervasive. And that's why, education has been such a huge focus for us, especially like conceptually it is. We're going to bake that in more and more to things that we build. And like, let's use this as an opportunity to teach people about why this technology is great. You know, it's easy to recite the headlines that you see from other people that don't understand it. But if you're in that echo chamber, you're not learning. Anyway, it's super frustrating. It's super
it's amazing to me. I mean, I find it's the same thing. Like it's, you know, especially in the arts, with artists, like you mentioned, like it's a challenge. Like there's so much peer pressure and so much anti, like the pressure to not do it is so strong, that artists who want to do it are terrified to do it because they don't want to get ostracized. They don't want to kicked off platforms. They don't want to lose their friendship networks or their jobs. And the people who are viscerally against it are clueless. And that's just the fact. Like, I have yet to meet somebody who was viscerally anti-NFT or anti-crypto, who had set up a MetaMask account, who had actually gone out, purchased an NFT, understands what gas is, understands what Gwei is. They don't know any of it. It's all the devil. You know what I mean? It's all the devil, and you are a bad human being for doing it. And doesn't matter what the argument it is, like, you will never convince me. Look, I understand
armchair activism.
You can talk about the environment, and we can have a discussion about that. because certainly there's an impact, but don't then go blast it on Twitter, which is a platform that literally hollows out mountains in the Alps to store servers because it would melt buildings with the amount of energy that like Facebook and Google and all these big companies produce, like is massive. Like I saw a great graph, in fact, that an organization put out, and I won't mention any names, but they placed, and they were trying to it was actually a negative on crypto. They were trying to go against crypto and NFTs. And I should pull it up somewhere, but it was basically they put the amount of energy burned in the entire crypto market up against other things. And not only was crypto and NFTs at the bottom, your clothes dryer is like three times the size. So anyone who uses a clothes dryer is contributing more to the problem than the entire crypto and NFT space. And then of course the major things were, of course, volcano, like there's so much that's beyond it. Again, not to say that it's a bad thing and we can't work on it, but like, it's like, okay, you have to, if you can't destroy the entire thing because of where it started, and there's so many people working to improve.
Like we can simultaneously acknowledge that this is a great technology with a lot of potential and that has things that need to improve. Like both of those things can be true. It's not a black and white either or conversation like it's often made out to be.
Yeah, and it really the thing that gets me heated about it is not necessarily the discussion and not necessarily the argument, because these are legitimate topics that have legitimate pros, legitimate cons, and these are things that can and will be solved. And in fact, if you're in the space, you know that it's actively being solved all the damn time. Like this is a problem that's going to be gone in like 2 years. Like it's just going to be solved. So you can come in now, or you can wait until everyone is successful later on, and you'll just be in the tailwind. But what bothers me is, and gets my ire up, is coming from the visual arts and coming up from freelancer, from animation director, hustling and grinding with a pencil and paper, right, all the way to startup technology and Web3, going through the whole process. Like I remember the struggle of being an artist and trying to make gold come out of your pen, is what Dali used to say, right? As an artist, your goal is to make gold come out of your pen, meaning you got to make art and it's got to sell. And I remember the challenge of that. And here we are, the opportunity of a lifetime, where every complaint you have is pretty much invalidated. Oh, NFTs are only for rich people. Awesome. If you think that, it's not true, but awesome. If you believe that, maybe you should sell something to rich people. Maybe it's the time to make art and actually have someone that can afford to buy it. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, but it's such a closed shop. And I'm like, it bothers me so much, because I'm like, you guys are missing the biggest opportunity of your entire life. And this is, it's to miss an opportunity like this, just not because of peer pressure or because disbelief, or just you don't like the idea of it, or some other thing that's kind of taken over your mind about it, without at least trying it. And I think you'll agree, like there's something magical about when you finally figure out the mess of how to do this. Like when you get that MetaMask wallet hooked up and you figure out how to deposit a little cash into it and you buy that first thing, all of a sudden you totally get it.
Totally.
All the arguments of like right click save, look, I have your thing. You're like, no, you don't get it at all. Like it's not
totally. I wasn't anti before I got involved, but I certainly didn't understand it. And I learned more in the week or two after I bought my first one than I did in months of trying to like read and learn about it.
Right.
Yes. It's just, it's a combination of the doing it, but also the access to the communities and getting plugged in with other people that also get it and that are willing and just kind of, for the most part, this isn't universally true, but for the most part, kind of embody this ethos of like, hey, let's all learn together. And it's just, there's nothing like it, man. It's such a unique opportunity.
I'm just blessed to be here, honestly, man. Let's see. Dojevise says, Killer interview as always. Thank you. Mark says it was Beanie, wasn't it? No, it wasn't Beanie. I will say I have talked to Beanie a couple times in DMs, and I will say that at least in the very short little things we've talked about, he's been totally cool. So not saying anything about the public persona. I'm not going anywhere near that. It wasn't Beanie. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Sometimes the people who seem, and this is just my personal experience, but I'm just going to say that sometimes the people who seem the most egalitarian, the most, we're here for everybody. The ones who have like, look, I am an influencer and follow me. And, we should all in this together. Like, it's always like, we're all in this together, except you're a dick, right? Like they're very different personalities, man. It's crazy. It was the patents I was worried about. It's definitely more of a cultural than a technical issue. It's true. It really is. It was it's purely a cultural thing. But I also think that's something that needs to change, because just because you think it's a cultural thing doesn't mean that it's a real world thing. Do you know what I mean? Like in the real world, like contracts and legal things matter, and protecting yourself matters, especially if you're planning on doing something for the long term. Doge Vibe says he has a question for both of us. All right. He says, if you could cast any voice actor in your shows, that's a hard one. Who would it be? Oh man.
You want me to go first? Well,
yes, because I have no answer.
Okay, so
I have no answer.
I can't cast everyone, but there are a few people that we have talked about. So I guess it would help to know some of the characters in our collection. So Blackbeard the pirate is one. Got to be Jason Momoa all day. Like I want so badly for us to be able to get Jason Momoa attached to this show and voice Blackbeard. So we're going to try to make that happen. I want Ryan Reynolds to voice either Nikola Tesla or our robot Nigel. I think he would be amazing at either one.
Yeah.
So there are a few others who I think would be fun, but those are the two that I always go to as the shoe-in for anytime we're having this conversation about potential talent for our show.
That's awesome. I do not have any, like, I'm so used to, like, I mean, we've worked with so many great voice actors over the years, but you would be surprised at the number of times, or maybe you wouldn't, but the number of times where, like, I'd be working with a company like Marvel or whoever, and we're like, okay, so here's the budget breakdown. Here's what we're going to need for the pilot, script and storyboard, and here's the team, and we're going to need X amount of money, voiceover talent, blah 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 blah. And the minute they see the budget, they're like, well, what can we cut? And they're like, well, nothing. I mean, you have to have writers, and you totally have to have it. And but there has been more than one time where I've been the voice actor, or like we, the team, have been voice actors. And so it's just like, all of a sudden, and the whole Cartoon Network thing kind of comes out. So you're just like, whatever the characters, you kind of pop into a voice, and like you just start going off. So anyone, I guess my answer would be anyone legit, because I'm not.
Well, no, that brings up a good point though. Like, I think there's a big part of me too, though, that wants like a bunch of our characters to be voiced by like friends and people in our community, because to be able to do that alongside like a Jason Momoa and a Ryan Reynolds, like, who gets kind of a chance? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and you just match the voice to the character, like,
exactly.
If we had people, we had people who weren't voice actors and were scared of talking into a microphone, and so when their voice would come out and would kind of be deadpan, just like what I call like normal person voice, like hello, hey, so I'm reading a script. Well, you can create a character that's like nervous and sweating and like really weird.
Totally.
And then if you have like a clown like me that's just like, you can talk like this, and we're coming up with some characters, then you can kind of create some weird stuff too. Like, you just play with it.
Yeah, I really want to be able to get my kids to voice a character. Like that, one of the most fun things about this for me has been seeing them get so excited about it. Because I've worked in like design and technology with like enterprise companies for most of my career, so I've never had this relationship where like they're interested in what I'm doing in this way,
Right.
but like they see this world that we're building, and like it's cartoons and it's books and animation and all this, and like they light up, and they've taken an interest in it, in NFTs because of it. It's like, I hope I can do this until the day that I die.
Yeah,
Because
nothing makes me smile more than having my 3-year-old or 5-year-old say that their favorite character is either Subdued or Finger Blaster. It just really makes me proud.
just hits you right there.
Right there, like, oh yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Oh, Judge Vibe is smiling. He says, great answers. And says, community voices are fantastic. Mark Sherbrown says, looking at the adult fantasy collection, you must be a card collector. What's the favorite card you own? Oh, damn.
That's a great question.
So I will give you, so it's interesting. That's a fantastic question. It's actually not what you might think, meaning most people collect cards for value. Right? It's like, oh, well, here's my, Babe Ruth rookie card or whatever. Like your special value card. For me, actually, I have them here. Let me see. I actually keep them close to my desk. So the Adult Fantasy Season 1, the Genesis set, was based off of, like, the front of the card was based off of Garbage Pail Kids. So I was like looking at the design for Garbage Pail Kids, and I decided to kind of try to like do an homage to that.
That's amazing.
And then the characters of Adult Fantasy is 100% a combo, like a threading the needle between Venture Brothers and 90s X-Men. So it's like take the old Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, 1990s X-Men with big shoulder pads, even some Rob Liefeld in there, and smash it with Venture Brothers, because that was a dope show. And like, that was the blending of the style. And then on the back of the card is Marvel Series 2. Like, 100%. We took it and updated. Obviously, we changed it. But what I have next to me on my desk was it's actually a different X-Men Series 2, but it's like the entire set.
Oh wow!
Right. So these are like, I love these are. Let's see it. Like, what's so crazy about this is that these were one of the early sets where each card.
That's so cool.
Like they went full blast on these cards with like full on like art pinup style. You know what I mean? And a lot of these guys
posters.
Yeah, I mean there were many posters. Like, this is Joe Quesada. This guy actually ended up going on to be the chief creative officer at Marvel.
It's amazing.
So this guy was basically my boss's, like the big boss when I was there, right? And he's still there. And so he just like, like all these pinups, and then they had like, these were like, I think this was one, but on the back there's also like, they had these cards that were like posters. So some of these would like connect up to be posters, right? Like, look how cool that is, man, right there, right? And then on the
so awesome.
And then on the back, like for the back of these, so you had the front like this, and then on the back of these, what they were doing like these like files, right?
Oh
like,
wow, yeah.
Like it was like they just pulled them off like the FBI file kind of a thing, right? And I was like, that's really creative design. It's a really good design. And so we looked at so many cards when we were coming up with Adult Fantasy. But ultimately, we settled on the Marvel Series 2 on the back, and on the front, we did the whole Garbage Pail Kids. But I'm still like, there may be something like, maybe we do action shots in the future,
Oh
like,
man.
Isn't that cool?
That's
like,
so cool.
And it's cool. It really, when you're a kid, and even as an adult, like, because each of the cards is so different, like the format from a product design, like my whole, I'm hardcore product designer. So like when you look at the product, and each one of the cards is similar but different, right? Where it's obviously got the same trade dress, it's got the same layout, it has to match because it's a collection. But then they went with different artists with different styles and different poses. It really catches
each one has
your
its
eye.
own personality.
Each one has its own personality, and I think, and I mean, you look at it, it's like if you really think about it, it's almost like a masterwork of a PFP collection, right?
Totally.
Like, because they're not the same pose. They're all different. And like here
Except
you go.
Those weren't generative.
That's right. Exactly. This is like a hell of a lot more work for people. You know? Like, so
That's so cool.
Yeah. So go for it.
No, I was just gonna say you mentioned Garbage Pail Kids. That took me back. So you know how my first experience with Garbage Pail Kids, we were at a car wash, and my dad was vacuuming the car out after he was done, and in the trash can in the little like stall that we had parked in was this massive 3-ring binder. So me being like the kid that I was, like I pulled it out front to back, filled with Garbage Pail Kids.
And those things are worth a fortune now, dude.
Oh man, I wish so badly. Like my dad saw it and was like, "Yeah, that trash can's where that belongs." Like I don't think we were able to take it home.
But like, we were like, I was like a couple of months ago, because I was kind of doing research on this, like Atom Bomb and like some of those early characters from like season 1, they're worth like a grand or two each, like depending on condition. Like
I'm sure that binder was probably a fortune at today's rates.
Totally, at least 0.2 ETH.
Oh my god. I don't know. That's not much these days.
I know. The minute you put an ETH, you're just like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah. That's funny.
GPK is awesome. Yeah, for sure. And Quesada Didi, dude, Quesada's Daredevil run is one of the all-time greats. Like that is his peak. Like Joe Quesada was like a huge artist in the 90s and really up in the 2020s. Like, I mean, he's still big, but yeah, I got in when he did the Ray, like his first limited series. And then I would say that like, I thought his Ash, like his own project Ash, was really cool. And in fact, total something that nobody knows. So this guy, Joe Quesada, was the chief creative officer at Marvel, and he would work. He had an office in the corner, but he only came in like maybe once a month, right? Because he had a loft in Soho, and it was like an entire floor. Like he just bought a floor, just decked out, like a giant fucking place in the middle of the city. And inside of his office, he did. It was funny, even though it was like you think, oh, Marvel chief creative officer, like, and every office has like Marvel stuff everywhere. In his office, he had all this stuff from his Event Comics company, which was his own characters. So he had like his own characters on the wall, and he actually, I don't know, he did, and this is going to be a super abstract reference that I don't think anybody is going to get, but he was the guy that did the Ugly Kid Joe album cover. Do you remember Ugly Kid Joe at all? No,
I do not.
They had like one hit for like 1 second, but he did the Ugly Kid Joe album, and then like his painting was there anyway. It's the Joe Quesada Daredevil. That to me is I think his best work. Mark says those are awesome. I've got a stack of the 1991s or somewhere at my parents' house. They weren't destroyed. I ripped so many of those packs. Yeah, man, we so many stories. Those cards from that era, where there was like the Marvel stuff, or like the Boris Vallejo collections, or the Frazetta cards that were coming out, or the San Julian, like all of the fantasy stuff that was coming out during that time. Because it was kind of like the first time that these fantasy artists who had done these fantasy paintings, these illustrations, because reproduction had finally gotten so well with print, right? Like, you remember, this, like once it got to the 90s, it was like, once they started getting into like some of the digital pre-press stuff, it really like changed stuff. And so all of these fantasy illustrators, kind of like how digital artists can now do Web3 and NFTs for the first time and make a living selling a digital image. Yeah. These guys were doing paintings and illustrations, and they were able to get like reproductive, like high res reproductive quality, and print series of cards. And like it went viral, I guess you could say, within like the collector community. It was awesome.
So cool.
Oh yeah. Father Didi is the best. Yep. Yeah, for sure. Cover of Cats in the Cradle. Was that the album cover? Was that the name of the album? I just remember it was Ugly Kid Joe. Yeah, it was like some, I mean, it was what you would expect, I guess, like some kid, some painting. should look it up later. It's
I'm
cool.
looking at it right now.
Right.
It's like the kid with the backwards blue hat.
Yeah, share it. Put it. Hit the share button. We'll put it on screen for people to see. Yeah, it's like a short kid. He's like, if I remember, his hat's backwards. He's got like slumpy little clothes, and like I think they had one hit, and it was really popular for a hot second. But he really liked that album cover, man. He was really digging it.
Yeah, let me see if it'll let me share here.
Yeah. Let's see. And I think also while you're doing that, we also have Dusty coming up because we're doing a giveaway. We're doing like a super special giveaway thing. So while you're doing that, Dusty, do you mind, Joe, if I pop Dusty in?
Yeah, no, let's do it.
All right. So Dusty, you okay to come on? What's up, Dusty?
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going, dude?
Good.
So we are doing a giveaway with Society of the Hourglass.
We are. So we are doing a lore-based giveaway, like a story contest. I got to give credit to Joe. He made an amazing story prompt. So that
was pretty good.
It's pretty good. Cool. So we'll post it, but just the short gist of it is that 344 meets Nigel, and we're going to see where it goes from there.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we'll post it in both our Discords and run it for, I think, what did we say? We're going to run it for about a week, and then
about a week. Yeah.
So maybe end of next week we'll pick a winner. But we've done a few of these story contests. We did one with Martian Premier League that was a ton of fun. Glue Factory, a few others. So I'm super stoked to see what people come back with on this one. I think the setup that we give 344 and Nigel and this prompt is going to send them down some interesting paths together.
And what are our prizes again? I know we're giving away an adult fantasy NFT, and I think
we're going to give away a citizen from our collection as well. Awesome. So there will be at least 2 winners. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, how long does it run again?
1 week.
1 week. Yeah. So we'll pick a winner Friday, maybe of next week, or 2 winners next Friday.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome. And I think maybe just a general call out that I like to kind of situate these in is like, there's no right or wrong way to respond. I think the point is to be creative. So if you fancy yourself an illustrator, like draw something. If you're a writer, write a story. We've had people do videos, comic book style stuff. Like sky's the limit. So I'm super
awesome.
stoked to see what we get back. Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. So, guys, this has been fantastic. It's been incredible. And I am super excited for Society Hourglass. And so you said that it's not, you don't call it series 2. It's like chapter 2.
Chapter 2. Yeah.
Chapter 2 is out now. So
it is minting now. Yeah. Just on our website, societyofthehourglass.com.
Go over there. Everyone should start minting it. Go check it out. It's an awesome project. Joe, this has been awesome, man. It's been such a pleasure.
Super fun. Super appreciate you guys having me on. We definitely got to do this again because this was a blast.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I love it. I love these kinds of conversations. It makes
man.
I love it
for sure.
And everybody in the audience, everybody watching, usually what we do now is we rush over to the Discord, to the Adult Fans Discord. Feel free, come on by. We do a little after party. We have some games. Usually I'm the one getting my ass kicked. In pretty much every game we play, but that's okay. It's okay. It's about
my life.
It's about the community. It's about the community. I'm not upset at all. But
hey Todd, just a quick comment from our Discord. Mark says that they think they need to see some close-ups of the awesome array on the bookshelf behind you. So maybe we'll have to do a special session sometime.
Oh hell yeah! If anyone is interested, I could absolutely pull things off the shelf and we could.
I'd tune in for that.
Oh yeah! All right. Okay, let's do it then. Reading time with Todd.
Love it.
So it's just super nerd. Then we're going super nerd. Awesome. That's a great comment. All right, we'll set it up. Well, guys, thank you so much again. Everybody, please go over to Society of the Hourglass. It's a societyofthehourglass.com. Check it out. They're minting now. And Joe, again, finally, thank you again, dude. This has been great.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate you guys, and I'm excited about the contest. And I know this is not going to be the last thing we do together, so we'll keep it going.
Awesome. And with that, we will call it. Thank you again, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hit the bell for notifications, subscribe, leave comments, all the YouTube stuff that everyone tells you to do. Just do it for us too, because why not? And with
That's right.
We'll see you next time.